Good morning, everybody. Eric McCool here of Permagora Live, coming at you on March 19th, 2020. We are starting off another day. It's a little late start for me just because I slept in a little bit, but I'm soon going to go through the news and look over what's been happening since I last checked, and there's always something new popping up. So there's no shortage of things to report on and discuss. And what I'm finding is, as I'm reading certain articles, I'm getting a sense of what it's actually implying or what it actually means. And it's very different from what the article may be trying to say. And I'm going to try and give you some sense of, if you don't already know, why this is very alarming to me, why the situation is beyond alarming. It is the full-on alarm. Like, this is it. Like, if this is actually going to happen, if we're actually going to be experiencing months or even longer than a year of lockdown, so to speak, then that is probably the biggest thing that's ever happened in terms of a huge shift in our country, in the country's existence. Like, that's bigger than the Civil War, which of course was a lot of deaths and took place over 5 years. But what I'm saying is that at the end of the Civil War, a whole bunch of new things happened that were unprecedented, but nothing to this scale. Nothing to the scale that they're going to just make blanket sweeping statements that the entire country must now follow these, let's be honest, draconian rules. And doing it in the name of saving lives and protecting people is patently absurd, because since when does our government care about saving lives or protecting people, with all of the numbers of people that die because they can't afford their insurance or their medical bills, or all of the people that die homeless in the streets, and all of the people that die in the wars that they manufacture? The idea that they're so concerned because a few thousand people have this virus and a few hundred have died is obvious to me that this is not what this is about. This is not about saving lives. And for us to go along with all of these changes, like now there's curfews and people are not allowed to leave their homes, or there's enforced lockdown, shutting down travel, shutting down all businesses. I mean, almost all businesses, of course, not all of them now, but the most businesses have brick and mortar and are out there in the world, and you can go in and people go into work at them. And if all of that stops, that is, we can't even fathom what that is going to do. However, we know it's not going to make us better off. We're not going to be more prosperous, or we're looking at catastrophe just because of that decision that the government made. It's not something natural thing that occurred that we just have no choice. The governments are making this decision, and they're attempting to manufacture our consent, and they've got everyone scared of this virus, and that's their hope, is that we'll be scared enough of this virus to go along with whatever they tell us without questioning it. And I, for one, am not having it. And, you know, it's not clear to me what exactly can be done, what sort of response is appropriate. I feel that I want to be in conversation with people about this issue so that we can get our heads together around it, and we can sort of collectivize this task of making sense of this, because not only is it a lot to consider, it's an overwhelming task to think about going against this. And honestly, I don't even know how we can. It almost feels like a checkmate to me. It almost feels like there's so little opportunity. We have so small of a window to put a wheeling stop to this. And I'm also going to discuss something a little more positive. There are perspectives that I appreciate that are saying, hey, look, this is our chance to turn all this around, to shake off all of these parasites and all of these corrupt individuals that are running our government, and build a new ecotopia. We could build a world in which, assuming that everything shuts down, that means that there's no one coming to tell you can't put your rain barrels out, or there's no one telling you that you can't build a tiny house on your land. And things like that might also go away, and that could be an opportunity. The challenge that I see with it is, if freedom of assembly is revoked, then it's going to be very hard for people to organize these kinds of things, not only because of threat from law enforcement, but just the threat is enough. Like, people won't come out even if there is no threat, even if we could all gather and stand up to them and say, hey, sorry, you can't break up this gathering. We're free people, and we're out here voluntarily. We're all taking the risk of being out in the world. And in groups, you can stand up to unjust laws more easily than you can as an individual. But so many of the individuals, I think, that would probably want to get out and go to meetings in their local community and talk to other people and start coordinating food production and supplies and work trade, who needs what, how can we help each other. That kind of thing can happen and will happen eventually, but not until we get over our fear, and not until we make a decision to do that rather than just sit and wait for the government to come give us a shot and, tell us that if we just stay home for 6 months, then that's going to fix it. So I'm a strong advocate of getting out into your community and talking with your neighbors and finding out who is in agreement. Really, we need to find each other. Those of us who are like, wait a minute, I don't know about this. Is this legal? Are they going to get away with this? Like, there's a lot of us who are concerned. I've been talking to people, and it's a little overwhelming because there's also this concern about the virus itself. And I'm not trying to downplay that. That's a risk. You could go out there, you get sick. I don't see what's any different about that than any other day, though. I mean, just look at the numbers. Look at how many people die of the flu. People die of pneumonia. People die in car accidents. It's like every time you go out into the world, you risk death, and the statistics are appalling. There's way more people dying of other stuff, and that's never caused a shutdown. And so, what's the real motive here? Is it really to protect people from death? I'm almost concerned that it's the opposite. I almost feel like, I'll get into that later. That my theory as to what this is will be a whole separate broadcast, which I'll probably do live. I'm still doing a few pre-recorded videos just because I have yet to really interact with the public a whole lot about this. I'm real busy. I've been driving around, getting things prepared, stocking up on things, and meeting with neighbors and talking with people. We just had a gathering last night of some folks, and we were all sort of putting our heads together about what do we have, what do we need, where can we go if we have to leave, like what is, and really the question is, what is an appropriate response to this? How do we stand up for ourselves in the midst of complete totalitarianism just descending on us like a wave? Like it just came all at once and bam, it's here. And now everything's being forcibly closed, and it makes you feel powerless. And I think it's important for us to remember that we are co-creating all of this, and it's our power that makes anything that happens in the world possible. We have to participate to some level. And I'm encouraging my friends and family to not necessarily go out and recklessly break all these quarantine laws, but to figure out what would be an appropriate way to gather people together to make plans without risking people who might be, have a bad immune system and things like that. So anyhow, I'm going to keep this one short also. I'm trying to keep these down under 10 minutes if I can. I hope to have longer talks where I'm going to either be going into a lot of depth, or if I'm talking with someone else, which I'm going to have to kind of get that whole process figured out. I'm new to this live broadcasting sort of situation, but I have a lot of people that I follow that are doing it, and I really appreciate the work they do. And I'm kind of following in the footsteps of, there's a couple of journalists I want to point out to y'all. These guys aren't really talking about the virus very much. They were onto some other stuff way earlier than this, and I consider it to be cutting edge exposing of the cartels, the criminals that are running all of this. And it certainly ties into all of this, and what the messages line up. Like clearly we're facing a rapid descent into totalitarianism, to fascism, to a complete lockdown of the planet. Even before this virus thing happened, that was sort of the consensus, was that the powers that be, who I can tell you in detail who they are. It's not the who is the they in, the they are doing this and they are doing that. Who is the they? The answer to that question is really long. There's a lot of them, and there's probably thousands of names, thousands of companies that are involved in this, and organizations and networks. And the journalist I was speaking of earlier, George Webb, has been the front guard of finding out these people, sniffing them out through metadata, through using software. I don't know exactly what his methods are, but he's able to access the networks that they're using, and he got hold of a BlackBerry that was being used. And the whole BlackBerry story is something you got to check out on George Webb's channel. George Webb, just 2 B's on YouTube, and it goes way back, and the content is overwhelming. There's so much information. Like I said, it would take probably 20-30 hours of in-depth presentation for him to go over the whole story from more or less start to finish, going back, let's say, as far as World War II and the creation of the CIA after the war, and the exfiltration of Nazi scientists and all of the projects they were working on from Germany to the United States and some degree South America. These are all things that are on record, and we know they happened. And George has been doing the deep dives on certain people that were involved. And it's not just George. What makes him so great is he's got a whole cadre of followers who are researchers and not YouTube internet researchers, real researchers. And not to say they don't use the internet, but what I mean is these are people who really dive deep. They really dig in and find information and find sources, and they're not spreading around any information that isn't verifiable. This is definitely on point journalism, what journalism is supposed to be. And George has recently become fairly popular. His subscriber list is just going up and up, and he's got all these people helping him out to do research. And so I highly recommend checking out his channel, along with John O'Loughlin, who George often broadcasts with. John O'Loughlin has a channel called Macduff, Kennedy's Man to Smash the CIA. And there's several other journalists that they're affiliated with, Mark Kulak of Housatonic Live, and there are others. I recommend checking all these guys out and listening to what they have to say. And I only mention them because they've inspired me to want to start broadcasting again. And the format is real easy, of just going live with people and talking to them and having unscripted conversations where we can get our heads around some of this stuff. So anyhow, this one is really just kind of another introduction video, trying to get y'all ready for what I'm hoping to bring, which is discussion of some of these situations. And I'm going to go ahead and cut this video off and start another one, and I'm going to go into a little bit of depth on some articles that I've been reading and how I interpret them. So I hope y'all are doing okay out there. Hope you're finding things to do, and hope that you're using some of your time to make preparations for crisis. And I hope that you're also reaching out to loved ones and just staying in touch with your people. Don't let this forced social distancing destroy us as a people even more than smartphones and internet and busy work our whole lives away schedules have already done. Like, we have been under attack for years and even decades as a people. Our institutions, our families, our community life, it's all been under a sort of subtle subversive attack where it's just little by little it's evaporating, it's eroding. We're less and less able to just sit down with our people and enjoy a good evening sitting around the fire and just looking at each other and talking. And of course, now with this social distancing being required by law in some places, it's going to normalize it. It's going to shift our entire society if we let it happen. And I'll get into that in my next video. I'm going to end it here and talk to y'all later.